Well, thank you all for joining us today. Through the pandemic, just like everybody else, we've tried to keep in touch with folks and make sure that we're here to support you however we can, and to try to have community with nonprofit peers as well. We hosted an event last fall. We had cocktails. We thought it was a little early in the day to do that today. So we're just going to make this very informal. If you know anything about the Community Foundation, we really are very informal people personally, but we also want you to think of us as a resource with many other folks I know who are on this screen who provide valuable resources throughout our nonprofit community. So it's nice to see you all. Thank you for joining. We'll probably just have 30 minutes or so of discussion and then have time for questions. And if you want to stay on and chit chat, that's fine. At the end, James is going to ask you, so be thinking about this. If this is something that you find valuable, some of our Community Foundation partners around the country have been doing things like this once a week. And we said, well, what are you talking about that often? And she said, it's literally just become kind of like a group of friends talking. So if you think that would be valuable, we're happy to do that as well. We had hoped to have about 50 people today. I think we have, I don't know, James, 100 and something?
We stopped counting at 145.
Okay. So we're happy to see you all, and glad that you're interested in the work the Community Foundation is doing and what your peers are doing around the community as well. I guess the Community Foundation has evolved. I've been here 8 years now. We've evolved a lot. We're, I think, gosh, we're 35 years old, or this year or next year. We just realized the other day. So we've been in the community for a while. The work that we've done has really evolved. Some of you have been in your roles long enough to know we used to do a lot of smaller $10,000 and $20,000 gifts. We transitioned that about 8 years ago and started looking at large community leadership projects that the foundation wanted to focus on. We did some work in literacy and honestly weren't very successful in that. We were coming at it from the wrong angle, and we aren't the experts in that. That's something that we know is you all are the experts. We are not. Then the thing that put us on the map for many of you probably is when we invited James Chung to town and had him do some data downloads of different things that our community can do to move forward. We haven't had him back for almost 2 years, and somebody asked me the other day, when is James coming back? And I said, well, we still have plenty of things to fund that James helped us identify. And so most recently, we have moved into the world of news and information. Many of you know we're affiliated with the Knight Foundation, Knight with a K, based in Miami. And their mantra is informed, engaged community makes a stronger democracy. And you can kind of chuckle and laugh and think that's pretty philosophical and highbrow, but we really believe that's true and are seeing that play out. So we're able to do some things there. But as we got more forward in the community, obviously we got more well-known, and we had lots and lots of folks who wanted to meet with us and nonprofits who want to keep us informed. So probably one of the smartest things I've done in the 8 years I've been here is, first of all, hire James Woods, because y'all know how awesome James is. And then he's been promoted twice in his time here at the foundation, most recently to a newly created position, which has been around a year or so, called the Director of Nonprofit Services. So I wanted you all to really understand that James is really your go-to guy. If you have questions about the foundation, his cell phone is on his business card. If you need him at 8 o'clock at night, I'm not going to promise he's going to answer or make you buy him a glass of wine the next time he sees you, but we really do want to be a resource. And James is by far the most plugged in into our work with the nonprofits, and he works very closely with Portia on our staff to help connect you all to donors if we think we have fund holders who might be interested in that. So I really want you to understand that James is absolutely a resource for you, and the foundation wants to be here to help you. And James is the best point of contact, and is honestly more accessible and responsive than I can be, given our different roles in the foundation. So again, thank you. We're happy to have you all here, and I'm going to turn it over to James for the next part of the discussion.
Well, thanks, Shelley. Gosh, I had no idea this was going to be James Appreciation Day, but I'm totally digging on it.
Every day is James Appreciation Day. So.
And I've asked Shelley to just stay unmuted just throughout this conversation, because she has some valuable information as well, and comments that she can add in at any time. When we were sort of plotting and planning this, it all came about because everything has totally changed, and you all realize that because you've all lived through this. This past year was something none of us anticipated, and we got through it, and we got through it together. And so I've taken a lot of calls lately about how we're operating and about how this whole grant process works. And we thought that this might be the best way to get all of the information out at once. So we're going to make all of this available. It's being recorded. We will certainly email it to anyone who would like a version of this, a copy of this. Um, and I'm hoping that I can answer all of your questions at one point in this conversation to talk about all of the different resources that we offer. And to get us started, I just wanted to start us off with telling you a little bit about what our agency is and how we operate. You've met Shelley and you know myself, and then we also have the Director of Positivity, which I think probably everyone in town knows who Raisin is. So once the pandemic has lifted a little bit more and people are a little bit more public, please feel free to stop in and say hello to Raisin. He likes to come to work with me every day, but I can't guarantee that he will be a fan of you because he's the grumpy old man who stands at the end of the hallway and shouts, "Get off my lawn." That's the dog. And so that's a little bit about who we are. And we truly are, as Shelley said earlier, we want to be exactly that. We just want to be, we want to be extremely casual. We don't want you to ever feel like we're in the ivory tower, because while we are sitting on we're a foundation that has assets over $100 million, our goal is to give it all away. You know, Shelley and I, in a perfect world, would be writing checks every second of the day. It doesn't quite work like that. And so that's part of the conversation today, is just to tell you a little bit about how we work. And so just some of the values that we stand for. We partner for causes that matter. As Shelley mentioned earlier, we were founded in 1986, and we're basically just a charitable partner for donors and professional advisors. And I don't really want to make this sound like a big sales pitch, because that's not what it is. But I think that you need a little bit of understanding about how we operate to understand how the grants work. And so just some things I want to point out to you, if you're obviously a nonprofit and you're working in the nonprofit sector. And so if an agency fund or an endowment is something that you're ultimately in need of or want some guidance on how those work, give us a call. Portugal on our staff is our donor services manager. She handles all of that. She can help you and your agency get a better understanding of how all of that works. But to be quite honest, the bulk of our money is tied up in what we call donor advised funds. About 95% of the foundation is donor advised money. And so what that means is that the donor is actually in control of the giving. And if you know of anybody too that wants to set up a donor advised fund, send them our way, because it could also help your nonprofit as well, because they could leave endowments, gifts, things like that to your nonprofit, because I am a firm believer in a strong nonprofit community will only make Wichita a better community. And so we want to support you the best way that we can. Now, on top of those two different areas that we have giving in, we also have what's called our unrestricted funds. Now, this is the area that a lot of people just think, oh, you have money to just give away. And we do, but there's some caveats to it. So that money is set aside to help in our different areas of giving. One of those being the Magnify program that I know many of you have taken part in. Then we also do things like, we're doing a big journalism project right now. And so those are projects that our board is directing us on, that they want to see things happen in that particular area. And so that's how James Chung came into being here in Wichita. We got connected with him. He identified several things that he thought could propel this community forward. And so that's where we are with that. So a lot of our unrestricted funds, they're tied up in our bigger projects. And right now, the journalism project, we're just in year one of a 3-year project. And so that's sort of how that works. I'm telling you all of that because oftentimes I get hit up for, oh, I've got a great idea to partner with you, or I want to send you this proposal. And that's certainly fine. You can reach out to me at any time, but I just want you to all have the understanding that for the most part, our unsolicited dollars are pretty much committed to the different projects that we have. Now, all of that being said, 2020 hit, and we can remember walking out the door wondering if we were ever going to come back to an office or life the way that we knew it. And one of the first things that we did was we quickly mobilized all of our donors and all of our funders, and we asked them to consider giving away money in addition to what they had already planned on doing in 2020. And so we basically did a double grant round last year. And so some of the grants that I'm going to talk about, there are some that are on hiatus for other reasons, and I'll go through all of that for you. But I just wanted you to be aware that, we've been doing everything that we can to pump as much money into the community. And then we also sent out a plea to all of our donors in the community at large, and raised about $275,000 that we were able to help distribute as quickly as possible. And one of the, God bless the arts community, because I really do feel at times they got overlooked in this whole pandemic, but the reality of it is that when this first started, our primary goal was to try to get money into the hands that were nonprofits that were dealing directly with client services that needed PPE. And so that was our big priority. And so we were able to get as much money out into the community as possible, and hopefully that we helped. So anyway, all of that being said, now that I've told you all of the history, and I want to continue on. So we're going to start with the first grant that is available this year. This is the George R. Tiller Memorial Award. This grant awards grants up to $10,000. The primary focus on this is women and children's health. This award was set up when Dr. Tiller was murdered in his church. The family wanted to figure out a way to give back to the community in ways that weren't necessarily as controversial as people wanted to make it. And so, you can see right there that the grant focus is simply reproductive health and services to women in need. And so I want you to consider talking to me about applying for this. The application for this is due June 30th at noon. And you can see on some of the ideas that we fund, medical education, but not scholarships. There's testing expenses, fellowship or research. And I want to tell you that this committee that makes the decision on the Dr. Tiller Award loves innovation. So anything that you can think of that is very forward thinking and innovative, they're on board with. So much so that we've had several projects that they have funded and then have gone back and said, hey, that's a great idea. You need to figure out a way to make that go statewide. How much money do you need? And so, just know that they're always looking for the next big idea. They're willing to take chances and, experiment and try things, but consider applying for that if you meet that criteria. And I want to point that out because oftentimes I have people just apply for things just to apply for things. And that's fine, but you could be wasting your time. And I hate for you to do that. So just look at the application, make sure it fits with what your mission is. And if you have any questions at all, just give me a call because I'm happy to answer those. The next one that I want to talk to you a little bit about is the Evergy Community Investment Fund. Now, this one was set up when the power lines went through those specific zip codes. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with that story and how that all played out. And as part of trying to make things right, Evergy came to us, put $1 million into the foundation and said, we want to figure out a way to get this into those communities that were affected by the power lines. And so those three communities are 67208, 67214, and 67219. Now, how this works is that they have created their own community advisory board. And that is the board who gets all of the application. And I've actually divided that board into two categories. And so, because the money is divided into two groups. So you can apply with a focus on either community and youth, or with community, or youth. It's two different categories. And so then once I get all those applications in, I divide them all up, and I have a group that looks at just specifically community applications, and I have a group that looks at youth applications. Everything is done on their own. We've tried really hard to make sure that this project is done very fair. And so then all of those scores are sent to me. They all score them individually. They come to me, and then I'm the one who actually tabulates all of them, and with their scores, I'm able to determine who the winner is. Now, this fund typically gives out about $200,000 a year. I'll tell you that they're very, very interested and concerned about the nonprofit community right now. And so I anticipate that they're going to give away more than that this year. So I would encourage you to apply. Some of the things, the particulars about this specific grant is the zip code thing tends to confuse people. So your nonprofit does not have to be physically located within those 3 zip codes, but the projects that you have and the projects that you are doing need to serve those 3 zip codes, and they actually need to focus on those 3 zip codes. I've had several nonprofits who are actually some of my favorite nonprofits in town. Yes, I do have favorite. I'm not going to tell who they are, but they're sort of a blanket nonprofit where they're helping the entire community. And that's fantastic. I love that they do that. But for this specific grant, they're really just trying to focus on those 3 zip codes. So it gets a little dodgy, and I know that there's some confusion there at times. So once again, if you have any questions about this one, call me. Now, this one is due as well on June 30th at noon. And if you've noticed, we've sort of got a little trend here going. Most of our grants are always due at noon on the last day of the month. And the reason we do it at noon is because if for any reason there's any type of technical difficulties, I am in the office and I can walk you through it, because I totally understand how it is to work for a nonprofit. And sometimes the equipment that you have that you're doing all of this might be a little subpar, or the technology that you're using, I get it. I've been on that side. And so I just want to be able to help in any way that I can. And this enables me to do it and be in a location that I can do all of that. So that's a little bit about Evergy. The next one that we want to talk about is the Wagonmasters. Now, this is a fantastic grant. It's our most popular grant. Whenever it is open, I truly get about 75 to 100 applications for this. It's a crazy time of the year for that, but we love it. But what most people don't understand is how this particular grant is funded. This is done by the Wichita Wagonmasters. You know them. They're the ones that carry the mops at the chili cook-off or at the River Fest. The funding for this grant comes from the chili cook-off that they do every year. And unfortunately, last year, they were not able to do that because of COVID. How it works is that they will have their chili cook-off. All of the profits that they make off of that event come to the community foundation. We collect all the applications for them, and then they have their own committee who looks at everything and makes the decisions on how those grants will be paid out. They're anywhere from $250 to $1,000. Now, they're very open to any type of application, and I encourage you to look at them. What we discovered years ago with these different grants committees is that you may not get chosen through that specific grant, but you've got a lot of influential people who are on those committees, who are looking at your grant application, who, I'll just tell you that for the Wagonmasters, we had an instance where somebody applied for funding, didn't get it through the Wagonmaster grant, but actually got it from one of the committee members who was a fan of that organization and just pulled the application out of the pile and funded them. And so I know that there's a lot of unknown giving that happens with the Wagonmasters. Now, everyone's going to apply for that now. I can just see it, and that's fine. But just know that they're a very great group of men and women who put this together. Unfortunately, it's paused right now due to COVID. Now, the beauty of this chat and the fact that every one of you is on our constant contact list is that they have tentatively planned to have the chili cook-off this year. And so, that being said, there is the possibility that this grant could still happen. Now, we've reached out to them and we haven't heard back because they're still working on all of the logistics. This wouldn't happen until fall Traditionally, this grant round ends on October 31st of every year, but you're on our list. And so the minute we know more information about this, we will let you know and encourage everyone to apply. Next up is our Victor Murdock Fund. Now, this is our biggest grant that we operate on behalf of the foundation. It is a $60,000 award that provides creative and practical approaches to solving community problems. And you know what? Every nonprofit in town could probably find a way to apply for this because I think that grant focus applies to everyone. Now, this one was part of when we were doubling up everything earlier last year. And so this one will not be available until January 1st of 2022, with the end date on that of January 30th, 2022 at noon. All of the information for this is online, so you can look at it. Now this one, I mean, like I said, it'll open on January 1st. And so if this is something that you think might be of interest to you, consider applying. I realize it's a long way off, but at the same time just seems to be going by extremely fast. And if you have any questions about that one at all, just give me a holler, because once again, I'm totally happy to help.
And James,
Next up,
James, can I interject?
Ahead,
this isn't, I know some programs that foundations run, like if you get it in earlier and it runs out of money, you know, so it's not, don't worry about applying January 2nd, or, you know, on January 2nd. Oh. We'll gather all of them. We want to give everybody plenty of time to apply, and then they're all reviewed at the same time. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Which is one of the questions too that was asked when we sent out all of the registration. You know, we would love for you to apply sooner rather than later. However, don't feel like you have to apply the second something goes online. You have until the deadline, which, like I said earlier, is always at noon. Now, I'll tell you that if you apply for something 2 days prior to the deadline and then think, oh, I wished I would have said that, then you can pick up the phone and call me, because as long as the deadline hasn't passed, I will help you tweak everything and make sure that it's the best grant application that you can create, so that we can pass that on to the committees. Because I want you to succeed. But I'll tell you that at 12:01, my hands are tied. What I have is what I have, and there's just not any fixing it. You know, so just know that I don't need it on the day that it's available, but the earlier the better as far as submitting that application, because if there's anything that needs to be fixed, we can do that. I did just want to briefly bring up the night fund. This is something that is available. As many of you know, we are a night city. The money from this fund comes from the fact that when the Wichita Eagle was owned by the Knight brothers, once that was sold, then all of the money, some of the profits went to the 22 different cities around the country that had a Knight newspaper in it. And so we have this money available now. This is really, I mean, this changes all the time. And so we get a lot of calls and comments and questions about this. So I just wanted to put it out there to let you know that we do have it. The grant details on it are specifically for the revitalization of downtown and surrounding neighborhoods. And I cannot tell you, I mean, I truly cannot stress enough how that's a very specific grant detail. And while we realize that helping Nomar would be a fantastic, you know, that's just not how this works. And since we are not the decision makers in this particular fund, we don't really get a lot of leeway, because we will take all of the information that's requested and give it to the fund holder, and then they make the decisions. But it's extremely specific. So the details are the revitalization of downtown and surrounding neighborhoods. The grant focus is to support arts and cultural entrepreneurship and public space. And this one constantly fluctuates. And so we are making a more concerted effort to stay in contact with you and not to bother you 24 hours a day, you know, and just bombard you with emails. But when we know more information about specific grants, when they're going to come online and go offline, we will let you know. This one right now is paused. I did talk to Courtney yesterday, who is sort of the liaison between Knight and the Community Foundation. And she did tell me that once we know for sure what is going on with this fund, we will pass all of that information along to you in constant contact. Just
James,
as an
I-
FYI,
Go ahead, sorry.
Shelley.
I see that Stevie Brewster has a question, looks like.
And you know what? I've got lots of screens going on, Shelley. So would you read the question?
Well, I had the question.
Oh,
I pressed that by mistake.
Okay.
Okay.
I would like to say something. I'm about to leave. I was stranded here coming from Texas, on my way back to Wichita. So I'm in Oklahoma now, getting some car work done. I got the mechanics around me, but I got my assistants taking care of all that work right there.
Perfect.
However, I love the meeting. I think Ray and them are going to inform me pretty much about the meeting. I don't have much longer on my battery time because I've been in my car all night.
Oh my gosh.
But I just wanted to let you guys know that I've already started the process with the MOI troop, Wichita, Kansas. And we do a lot of things in this area that's a lot of these grants will be needed for. I have a community service activist group as far as kids taking pictures of different locations, eyesores throughout the neighborhoods, and they're going to tackle those problems one by one with an action plan sheet, building a team. Right now, I'm trying to get the parents involved as far as transportation wise. And then the first group is the MOI Theatrical Dance Troupe. And we're going to be dealing with everything from suicide to gun violence, from bullying, from teens absence from sex, pretty much everything that confronts teens through the arts. We're going to use it as far as skits, singing.
Well, and you know what? I hate to cut you off, and I don't. Please don't think rude of me. You're getting to what I'm actually getting to.
Okay.
Because this particular meeting was not set up to talk about what everybody individually is doing, because as I said earlier, there's like 145 of you. But I've thought about that, Stevie. And I'm actually partnering with another community foundation here in the country who has figured out a way to put nonprofits in better contact with the community foundations as well as with donors. And so your timing is perfect. So if you can still hear me before your battery dies, great. And if not, I'm on touch base with you when we're done. How that's going to work. And so now that we've talked about Knight for a little bit, I want to talk to you about Magnify, which is basically what, and we'll come back to, I know the emergency fund is on your screen right now and we'll pop back up, but Magnify, which was our nonprofit enhancement piece. And so this is a program that's been in effect for about 3 years now. And it originally started out as just ways to send nonprofits to trainings. And then what we discovered is that we really didn't have any control, and not that we wanted control over it, but we just wanted to make sure that the money was being spent the best way possible. I'll tell you that one of our donors, when I first started this job, one of the first things I thought was yay, I mean, this is fantastic to help give away money. But then one of our donors pulled me aside and said, you know, you may love this, but the reality of it is to give away money well is extremely hard. It's not as easy as one thinks it is. And so we created this Magnify program. We wanted to figure out a way to help nonprofits. One of the ways that we did it, I mean, it was originally started so that we were helping with trainings. And then we figured out a way to partnership with the Lilly School of Philanthropy. And what we did was we were sending a staff member, one per organization, to the Lilly School to a fundraising training and basically picking up the tab for everything. I know that several of you have gone to it. In fact, to date, we have sent 75 nonprofit leaders through that training. And then last year, what we had planned for you is that we were going to bring in one of the facilitators and actually do a part 2, so that everyone that had gone through a training could build upon the knowledge that they had. And then we were still, on top of that, we were still going to send people to that school. You know, COVID hit, all of that changed. Right now, the plan is that in 2021, we're going to send, hopefully start this program up again for sure in spring of 2022. You know, but in the meantime, then exactly what Stevie was talking about, we were trying to figure out a way to help get what you're doing into the hands and the minds of our donors, you know. And so this is truly, we're working on experimenting with this and planning this. So I don't want anyone to, you know, I'm just giving you a little teaser, but just know that at some point, the plan is I'm going to start reaching out to nonprofits, and we're going to start doing some things virtually where it will be sort of like a small presentation, a 5 to 10 minute presentation that you will do that we can start recording. And then our hope is that we can possibly get this in the hands of the people who are willing to fund things. You know, like I said, there's still a lot of things to work out. So I don't want to overpromise this at all. I just want to let you know that we've heard you, that we're trying to do everything that we can to make this happen. And, you know, and our hope it would be that we could get you in front of the donor, because nobody tells your story better than you do. So thank you for that, Stevie. I hope that you're still around with us and that your battery hasn't died. And if it has, you know, have a safe trip home. Then I just wanted to tell you too, that if you know of any other nonprofits who are, need to get connected with us, who haven't, the best way to do that is at the bottom of our webpage, there is a constant contact, just a link that you just click on it, that as a nonprofit leader, director, development director, anybody, you can just fill out that information, make sure that you mark that you're a nonprofit. And then anytime we have any information available about anything, we'll send it out to you. And we try to keep everything just concise, and so that we're not, like I said earlier, bombarding you with things. Anyway, so I've said all of that about some of those grants. The one grant that we didn't talk about that I want to still hit on is our Emergency Assistance Fund. This one, several of you have used. You know, this is a fantastic fund. I'm not sure if you are all aware of it. So that's what we're going to do. The award varies on this one. It's anywhere from, on an average, it pays out sometimes from $2,500 to $5,000. It truly fluctuates. What this fund was designed to do is that it provides immediate assistance for nonprofits within Wichita when something happens that literally stops you in your track from fulfilling your mission. And so it could be things like recently, Alzheimer's and humankind, you know, that Arctic blast that came through town, you know, and everybody had frozen pipes. And so, you know, we certainly couldn't pay for the frozen pipes, but we could help with the insurance deductible. We've done all sorts of things, from air conditioner coils to, we had a group who had some students who were literally on their way to a baseball game and the bus broke down. And so the kids were all stuck alongside the road, and we were able to help pay for the bus to get everybody home. You know, it just varies all across the board, but it's here. Now, the best way to access this fund, if you're ever in a situation that you think that it might qualify, then seriously, just pick up the phone and call me. Do not email me, do not fill out that application. It's there and you can do all of that and it will still come to me, but the quickest response is going to be for you to call me. I think everyone in town has my cell phone number. So as Shelly said earlier, you can call me after 8, but the reality of it is I'm 51 and I'm probably in bed. So it's going to be the next morning before I call you. But it's here to help. Now, I will tell you that some of the things that it will not pay for are things like payroll, you know, things like that, you know. And I will tell you that the committee that makes the decisions for the emergency fund, they can't get enough information on this, because while they truly want to help, you know, like I said earlier, they want to make sure that the money is spent in the best way possible and that we're not just throwing money at a situation that is probably not going to go away. and that doesn't happen very often. I just want to make you aware of, of sort of the guidelines for that. So I think I've gotten you through all of the different grants that we offer. As far as some of the different questions that we've been hit with, I do want to point out that as far as getting funding from the Community Foundation, you have to be a 501c3 in good standing. All the I's have to be dotted and the T's crossed. Your 990 has to be filed, everything, because we check all of that. So before a check is issued to you, we're making sure that we're doing everything the government wants us to do. Another question that we got too was about collaboration. And I will tell you that every one of the grant applications that we offer loves collaboration. If you can figure out a way to collaborate with another nonprofit in town, make sure it's listed. And like I said earlier, if you send me that application prior to the deadline, I read through all of them. And if for any reason something doesn't make sense or I think it could be better explained, I'm going to reach back out to you so that we can make sure that we get the best information as possible to our committee members. We had another person ask us earlier about the pandemic and if that made any changes as far as our grant applications. You know what, we did go in and add a question to all of our grant applications this year, which was just specifically, what changes did the pandemic bring about to your organization and do you plan to keep them? And that I want you all to know that really is just an informational question that the foundation is asking because we're trying to play a part and be a part of the conversation as everything is opening up again. And I've noticed that some nonprofits are really taking COVID and the pandemic into consideration as far as all of that concerned. And then some are just ready to jump right in. And I don't know what the right answer is. We just are trying to gather all of the information, just for ourselves. We're in uncharted territories here, and we're going to be with you every step of the way. Every one of our applications, it will ask for attachments such as a budget and a copy of your board and a copy of your EIN. I will please ask that when you submit all of those things that you do indeed submit those, because you know what, there have been times where I have gotten just blank pieces of paper or just things written on a Microsoft Word sheet. And I will always reach out to you, but it's just good to try to be as accurate as possible with any of that. Spell check, I will reach out to you before it goes to committee, but I'm telling you, if it comes into me after the date, then it literally just goes the way it is. So, and then another thing too, to be cognizant of is that I have worked in the nonprofit field where you were just constantly writing grants. So I know how to write a grant. I totally get that. It's just in the specific grants that we offer, truly do keep your request amount at whatever the maximum is. Now, if you don't need the maximum, certainly don't ask for that. But, to have a $60,000 grant and then ask for $75,000, I'm just going to tell you from sitting in on several committee meetings with these various grant committees, that that tends to be a turnoff to them. They don't love that. They want to make sure that you've got some skin into the game, that you're figuring out how to do all of this, and so truly just ask for what is available, if indeed that is the budget. And then I'll tell you too, that Shelley and I are sticklers on this. You know what, when it comes to your budget, you need to include what it's going to cost to staff that project, because you all have to eat. And nobody should do anything for free. That just needs to be on there. It needs to be included. I will be your biggest cheerleader when it comes to these grant committees that I sit in on and watch them make the decision. Now, as far as grant workshops, that was something that was asked as well. We don't offer any specific grant writing classes. We have several resources. The AFP has put some things out as far as some different classes that they have facilitated. The Kansas Nonprofit Chamber has. There's a nonprofit in town called Nonprofit Go, which has put all of those together as well. And so seriously, we've got a list. You can just reach out to us at any time, and we would be happy to point you in the right direction.
And
Connie
WSU
Bonfi
al-
has point.
oh,
Yeah,
sorry, James.
WSU is fantastic.
WCU, yeah.
Connie Bonfi is another one. She just chimed in on the chat too. Connie has written a lot of grants. Many have been funded. Connie's a great grant writer as well. All of our grants right now are online at wichitacf.org/nonprofits. All of the applications right now are due on June 30th at noon. And we're constantly monitoring the chat right now. And so if anybody has any other additional questions, I'm happy to answer them while you're here. You know, our original plan is that we would just take everyone off of mute and let you ask questions, but I really wasn't anticipating 147 of you. And so I realized quickly that that could spiral out of control. You know, and so Will has chimed in too that the Kansas Professional Grant Writers Association is in existence. You know, we just want you to look at us as a collaborator, someone that we can, we're not always going to know the answers, but we're going to help. We'll try to help you find them. Connie Bonfi wanted to know how many grants are funded annually from the Victor Murdock Fund. The Victor Murdock Fund is probably one of my most favorite funds. It's getting ready to be my most favorite fund. You know, if you don't know the history of it, just briefly, I'm going to bore you with it because I have you all trapped here on this Zoom. Victor Murdock, you know, was one of the original Wichitans, and this fund was created by his grandson, Shelley, Captain Delano.
Yes.
And Captain Delano would spend his summers here staying at the Murdock house. And the actual Murdock house is on the property of Cowtown. And when the Murdocks passed away and ultimately Captain Delano passed away, and Captain Delano, for those of you who don't know, his claim to fame was, if you've ever watched the movie Pearl Harbor and saw where they ran down and got the cook and brought him upstairs to shoot, you know, when the Japanese were attacking, and why that's Captain Delano's story that actually happened. That was him. And so he had a lifelong tie to Wichita. When he passed away several years ago, a portion of his estate has come to the Community Foundation and created the Victor Murdock Fund. And it was already in existence, and he was doing it as a way to honor his grandparents. But now it's a bigger award. Right now, it's giving about $60,000 a year, but the estate was large enough that it's paying out over several years. And so, Shelley, you're gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think we've probably got 2 or 3 more years. We're going to be able to start giving away $50,000 awards. It's ultimately going to grow over time. So right now, it's our largest grant at $60,000. You know, so we love it. Let's see. Lawanda had a great one too. As far as the dreaded timing out when completing the application, you know, I wish that we have a fantastic application system. However, in an effort to make it easier on you, where you didn't have to rely on having login information, it times out. And so what I suggest to nonprofits, when you are when you are considering filling out an application, to go in there and print out all of the questions, write everything that you would want to write in a Word document, and then cut and paste when it's time to apply, because the website page will time out after a period of time. So if you leave it open for an hour or so and don't have any activity, it thinks you have walked away and just deletes everything. And then you're literally just out of luck. And so that's a great question, Lawanda. Thank you for that. As you all know, you can contact me at any time. Travis is wanting to know if there are any opportunities to match with funds that are part of the grants that we've shared today. You know, there are not through us. There could be through other foundations. And if that is something that you are working on, you know, I've had several nonprofits who have reached out because they're trying to get matching funds. You know, call me first, because you know, I'll do everything I can to give you a better understanding of how that particular grant works and how it doesn't work, and if I think there's any chance that that could actually happen. And then as far as where do you find all our grant applications, everything is online on our webpage, wichitacf.org. And so you can go there at any time. We keep all of those updated. And I'll tell you though, I mean, you're all on our constant contact. We have literally had things that have popped up saying, give this money away in 3 weeks, and we will do everything we can to do that. And when that happens, you will be the first to know, because we will send out an email on constant contact so that you've all been made aware of this. I think that's it.
I just wanted to touch on, I guess, kind of some of the more philosophy of grant making and things. And obviously we're a pretty laid back, informal group. But that's, we really do mean that. There, so, and almost everybody on staff has worked for a nonprofit at some point, so we feel your pain and understand the frustrations that you all struggle with every day. We talk a lot to our fund holders about giving you general operating money, about we're trying to get people to think about multi-year gifts. You know, I was at the Girl Scouts for 5 years, and the bulk of our cost was not volunteers. Volunteers ran the program, but staff to make things happen. Like the Knight Foundation, for example, they won't make a grant unless, or they'll only pay 10% overhead or operating or whatever you want to call it. We don't really have a formula like that. You know, it's got to be reasonable. And we always joke, you know, if you're asking for 75 and you're paying yourself 50, we're not going to fund that. But you know, it's a reasonable amount. Like James said, we worry a lot. We have people come in and say, you know, they're going to do this program and there's no staff budget or no expense budget. And that's not a realistic business model. And I won't spend too long on this soapbox, but just that whole idea of, we propagate that idea of the starvation cycle of nonprofits. So we want you to think about the importance of that as you write these grant requests. And truly yeah, you know, we get a ton of grant applications in at the very last second. But if you can give James a few days, if he sees it and doesn't understand something, or sometimes I know I get so close to my projects, of course, everyone understands what I'm saying, but maybe not. So maybe if James reads it and sees something that's not clear, and often James has such good relationships with all of you that he knows you mean this, but maybe it doesn't come out that way. We want you to get this money. We want to do what we can to facilitate that. And just my final point, and Portia Portugal is on this call today too. She is our Director of Donor Services. And she and James, you know, their offices are next to each other. Sometimes I think they're siblings. They work so closely together because James helps Portia understand what's going on, and we're increasingly getting donors come to us and say, tell us what's going on in this field. Portia's working with a guy today, and we said, what are you interested in? And he sent her literally a list of 42 nonprofits. And it's given her the opportunity to talk about them and help him figure out, after he and his wife die, where they'd like to leave their money. And we're going to facilitate that for them. So we have the great honor of doing that. And, you know, and again, if we have somebody who, you know, absolutely wants to know everything about Empower Evergreen, which is, I think Ariel's on the call, one of our newest nonprofits in town. Our goal is to get that donor in front of Ariel, because he's going to tell the story better than we can, but hopefully we can kind of broker that arrangement. So I'm so proud to be in a city that has such amazing nonprofit community, and we want to be a resource in whatever way we can.
You know, and while all that was going on, I was having, for many of you who have done these Zoom things, and you realize that there's a whole lot of setup involved prior to making even any of this happen. And so I literally am not being able to see a lot. And while all that was going on, I had Jocelyn, who is here with me, scroll me through so I could see everybody's wonderful face. Oh my God, it's so great. It's fantastic to see all of you. Thank you for doing everything that you can to make this city a better place, because we need you. All that being said, you know, reach out. I don't want you to think that you ever can't pick up the phone and call me. We can get a lot done over the phone, trust me. And I think that's it. You know, everybody go and have
James,
wonderful rest of,
there are a few people asking to be added. Repeat again how they can get added to make sure that we have them on the distribution list for this.
Oh, sure. If you're not on our email list, then if you go to our webpage, wichitacf.org, down at the very bottom of the page, there should be a way, it says to be added to our mailing list. Jocelyn's going to show you how to do that right now. It's right there, and you would just type in your email address and your name, and then that you are a nonprofit. And by doing that, then it will put you on a list that basically anything nonprofit related will be emailed to you, so that you know. Yeah, and then on this same webpage too, Jocelyn, oh, she zoomed out of it too quickly, but for those of you who are not familiar with our webpage, you know, if you just go up to the nonprofit portion, and then just click on grants, and then truly everything right there to the side is listed. You click on available funding. And I do want to hit on just some other things, just as sort of an FYI, because most people don't know this about the Community Foundation. You know, scholarships are a wonderful thing. The reality of them is that to receive a scholarship is fantastic, but to be the administrator of a scholarship is just so much red tape that you would truly want to pull your hair out like mine is falling out. And so I'm telling you all of that because we actually have several scholarships that we help facilitate. It's not something that we actively do for donors. Many of these have just been around for a while, and we just sort of do this as a service. Evergy has one as well for students who lived within those 3 zip codes that we mentioned earlier. But we have them as, you know, and encourage people to look for us and apply students when it's that time of year. For the most part, the timeline on that has all passed, but it's all right there for you. So all that being said, thank you, Shelley. Thank you, everyone. You know, like I said, we haven't done a lot of these, and I think it went relatively well. If it was, you had a horrible experience, please don't email me and tell me, because I don't need that kind of pressure. Just kidding. And like I said earlier, it's so wonderful to see all your faces. I promise that when things have relaxed a little bit and the world has gone back to a little normal, I'm taking every one of you out for a drink. We're going to go have a party. Yeah. I see Faye shaking her head. Yes. Yeah. And Molly. Yeah. Anyway. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Truly reach out if you need anything. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, James. Good job, Jocelyn.